The generation flap. Hilda asks what is all this, and yet Sabrina pointlessly asks her how she likes the decorations for the surprise party for Archie tonight. It was obvious she hated them. Hilda says to Zelda that it's a fine time to tell her because they're having a party too, where a lot of witches are gonna show up, including Della. Fortunately, Sabrina can easily talk her into letting her have the party anyways. And she's told that the mortals will have to use the back door and stay in the back. Sabrina wisely uses magic to levitate stuff behind her. And so I wonder why she's still insisting on having the party at her house and at Archie's house. Hilda amusingly can't say a word and Della corrects her. She says that she'll bring down the house and says spells, so she fixes the house after that happens. Della's relatable for once by calling it childish nonsense. But then she wastes time with the spell for no reason too. So why did you think Hilda was being childish? She wants absolute silence, and gets interrupted by Sabrina's friends being loud. Veronica sees the witches from the window, calling the witch outfits groovy. That's nice of her. It sure is convenient that Della gets calmed down right away. Della wants silence to concentrate on the spell, and she gets annoyed by the music loudly playing. It's still nice music though. She conveniently didn't blow her top after that, and then gets annoyed when loud noise happens because Moose dropped something. He wants to find a broom and clean things up. The broom is arbitrarily programmed by magic to talk to him and to fling him into something and laugh evilly, when that'd make magic really obvious. Betty asks Sabrina what she told Archie to get him to come here, and she says that she asked if she could borrow his canoe. Archie says he can't bring the canoe tonight because his car is stalled. He's incredulous when Sabrina tells him to kick the tire because it supposedly worked for her once. She casts a spell over the phone so that when he kicks it, the car isn't stalled anymore. He thanks her, and the broom arbitrarily flies when Moose is holding it even though he's not a witch, let alone its owner. Della continues her trend from the comic for the first time of being shockingly all bark and no bite. She somehow stays calm. Then when Moose falls into the chimney and is covered in soot, Della finally gets mad enough to cast a spell, so she turns him into a monster. Reggie just assumes he's wearing a costume. It sure is convenient that Della turned him into a Frankenstein monster that looks so similar to his normal appearance that they would come to this conclusion. Hilda for once shows a soft side, telling Della that she can't turn Moose loose on those poor kids. Della undoes the spell, and Reggie asks if he can change really quickly again, and he sends smoke at him accidentally and makes him cough. It's play of Zelda to tell Sabrina that she doesn't want to frighten her. She says that one more noise and Della will get mad. Finally, Sabrina gets the idea to create an invisible barrier in front of the door so that no noise will come through it. But she should realize that the noise will still go through the walls. And even if the barrier takes care of that too, Hilda and Zelda should have thought to do this earlier, first. After all their time being witches. Sure is convenient that Della didn't just brainwash the mortals into leaving the house right away, and instead went back to what she was doing already. She's probably just too stubborn to relocate the witches' gathering, because this is where she wanted it to be. Why is it at Sabrina's house? She's just one witch, and there's plenty of witch households out there. Archie's car shows up, and he can't reach the doorbell with the canoe in his hand at first. He hits it just fine, so that was kind of pointless. When Della opens the door to be a jerk, the canoe cathartically falls on her. Serves her right for telling witches to be evil. She thinks the teens did that deliberately. She wants to zap the kids, and she stays still, and Hilda says it was her micro-witch whammy and it backfired. Huh? I wish it was explained that Zelda froze her in time. Instead, it turns out she shrunk herself. I guess the comic lore is canon, and when a witch's spell is interrupted, it can backfire and hit them. But that makes no sense. This story was about Sabrina wanting to celebrate Archie's birthday at her house of all places, when it should be obvious that magical stuff could happen there. But apparently she had to have him come over to her house, because she was the one who had the idea to get him to come to a house by telling him she needed his canoe. Unfortunately for her, Della insisted on having a witches' convention at Hilda's house of all places. You'd think it'd be her house instead. And after calling Hilda's showing off of magic childish, she shows off her magic, or tries to. but gets mad at the noise constantly interrupting her. Somehow the evil head witch who keeps telling witches to be evil doesn't immediately confront Sabrina's friends when they make noise and kick them out of the house. Sure, it's a good thing she calms down every single time, and then somehow shrinks herself, when she didn't tell her magic to do that. I guess this was a confusing episode. School days. Della shows up at Sabrina's house of all places again for a small request. Everyone but Sabrina runs out of the house. Even an inexplicable skeleton boards up. And Sabrina figures out that she wants Hexter babysat again. Why was he used as a character past the first episode he was in? I can't believe this. He offers to go to school with her. She considers turning him into a doll so that it won't be a disaster. And she gets turned to the size of a doll by him because she didn't do it to him a lot faster. And at least she explains that her magic is limited. And that's why she can't just turn herself back to normal right away. And yet she can zap something on her back and tells Ophelia to pull it. So she convinces her to bring her to school and she gets put in her locker. Grundy says that Hexter's young for this history class. He says he doesn't think so, meaning that he's older than he looks. She asks him when Washington crossed the Delaware, and he magically summons Washington while he was doing that in front of everyone in the class. Why is he making magic obvious? Won't witches get educated to not do this? Wouldn't Della have told him not to? Why did he summon other people from history, like Ben Franklin and Betsy Ross? Sabrina gets out of the locker and slows down her fall with her dress poofing out. Sabrina's magic told her to find a mean alley cat, and she immediately finds one, as it was near a high school, apparently. Ben Franklin tells Weatherby to fly his kite, and Hexter summons a storm indoors, confusing him. Hexter arbitrarily has Weatherby get hit by lightning, and Sabrina pulls the cat's tail after saying it'll hurt her more than him compassionately. So she arbitrarily gets turned back to full size from that. Because the episode needed padding to last this long, when it's just Hexter using random magic for no reason. So that requires no talent to write. That's not impressive. Grundy and Weatherby don't know what's been going on when it's obvious, and only Reggie knows somehow. Hexter apologizes to Sabrina. Is he lying? She summons stuff, and for some reason he obeys her when she wants him to send historical figures away. I have to assume they aren't the real deal, because that would change history. Because Sabrina summoned a truck, Grundy assumes that the historical figures were actors, and Weatherby tells Sabrina she did a great job because it was engaging for the students to see all of those historical figures. Sabrina forgives Hexter because things turned out alright, but only because she fixed everything. And he gives her a Reggie doll that tells her to pull a string. Why did he do that? Nothing he does makes any sense. He's not a well-written character in the least. If he's bored, he could just read a book. This story was about Hexter arbitrarily going to Sabrina's school when she was made to babysit him on a school day. When you'd think Della would want to try harder to keep magic a secret than that. Also, it was common sense of Sabrina to turn Hexter into a doll instantly, or at least get rid of his magic, the minute she had the idea instead of saying she would. Of course he shrunk her down. And I guess I'm supposed to believe witches have a physical magic battery in them in the show too. And it being smaller is why her power is so limited that she can't turn back to normal herself. But she can do plenty of other things. And it makes no sense that pulling a cat's tail turns it back to normal. It's just written so that the episode can last long enough for Hexter to arbitrarily summon historical figures, when witches should all know that they have to stay secret. It doesn't require any creative talent to come up with what Hexter was doing. And it wasn't charming and funny enough to make up for the bad writing this time around. I was just annoyed and confused.